Welcome back to Library Choice YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful ruffle sleeve. So the ruffles just goes around the arm, and I made this using satin fabric. It's a very simple tutorial and it's really beautiful. If this is what you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. For this tutorial, I'll be working with this satin fabric, and the measurement I'm working with is 18 inches for my armhole. So 18 inches divided by 2 is going to give me 9 inches, and I'll be adding 1 inch allowance to that to sew it on the underarm area. So I'm putting my fabric on fold, and I'll be measuring 10 inches on fold. So by the time I open it out, it's going to give me 20 inches, and the length of this lining is going to be around 6 inches. So this actually depends on how big you want your ruffles to be. So I'm measuring 6 inches by 20 inches, which is 10 inches on fold, and then I'm going to cut that out. So after cutting out the lining, the next thing to cut now is the main fabric. So now to get the measurement for the main fabric, remember I used my armhole measurement to get my lining. So I have 20 inches length here, so you can actually multiply this 20 inches by 2 or 3 depending on how full you want this ruffles to be. So if I multiply this by 3, it's going to give me 60 inches, and the fabric I'm working with has a length of 60 inches. So that is why I just want to exhaust that length. If you don't want it that full, you can just multiply by 2, and that's going to give you 40 inches. Okay, so it's going to give you 40 inches in length. It's going to be long by 40 inches, and then for the width of the fabric I'm working with, I want it to also be 20 inches. Okay, so by the time I put it on fold, it's going to give me 10 inches on both sides. So I'm going to cut out a fabric of 60 inches length by 20 inches width, which is what I have here. Okay, so I'm just exhausting my entire length. I said this fabric is by 60 inches. I'm exhausting that for my length. If you don't want it this much, you can just multiply by your armhole measurements by 2, and in this case this would have given me 40 inches instead of 60 inches. And then for the width of the fabric, I have 20 inches here, and by the time I put this on fold, that's going to give me 10 inches. Okay, so I hope you got that. So on fold now, I have 10 inches by 60 inches. So now the first thing I'll do now is to go over to my sewing machine and sew this. So to sew this, I'm going to take the main fabric. So this is the fabric for the ruffles. I'm going to take it right side facing right side. Remember, it's cut together. I'll just put it on fold like this, and then this opened part, I'm going to sew it close. So I'll take it to the machine and run a straight stitch, and then sew this. Okay, so I'm gonna need to sew it close. So at this point, if you don't want it to be big on the underarm area, you can just take your both ends together now and then shape it like this around here. But I think I'll be leaving mine like this. But if you don't want it to be, if you don't want it to have the same length, so like I said, if you don't want it to be long on that part, so here you can just come here by maybe 10 inches or 11 inches inwards, and then you curve your hand like this before you add your lining. But like I said, I'll just be leaving it as it is. So the next thing I'll do now is to turn this out, turn it to the right side. Remember, it was folded on the wrong side before we sew it. So now I'm turning it to the right side, and then this is what I have on the right side. So this my lining of 20 inches. I'm going to be dipping it inside this. Okay, and once I dip it inside, I'll bring it out on both ends. So here now I have one end here. I'll place it in between this, making sure that my sewing part here is on this side, it's not in the middle. You can also place it in the middle, but it's going to be as a guide for me when I want to gather it. So I prefer it to be on this part. So now I'll just place this interlining at a centralized point now, and then I'm going to sew it. So I'll just hold it with a pin now to explain to us. So once I see that it is centralized, I'm going to pin them together like this. So after sewing it on this side, I'll go over to the other side and bring out the lining. So you can see that this fabric is actually 60 inches in length and the lining is 20 inches, which means it will automatically ruffle this fabric for me. Okay, so I have the lining. You can see where the lining is stopping, so I'm going to drag it to the end of the other side, which is here. So I'll also sew it, I'll centralize it here also, and then I'm going to sew it. So I'll just pin it like this also. So this is what I have now. You can see how small what we have here. No, we no longer have a fabric of 60 inches length. You can see how small this is. So I'll go over to the machine and sew this first. So you can see that this ruffle is a little bit much. If you don't want to see this much, you can just multiply by 2 like I said. So this is sewn now and this is what we have. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to gather it. So now on this part where I sew it to turn it out, okay, you can see it, where I have my seam line here, I'll go over. Remember, I still have the 60 inches here, it's just gathered together. So I'll take it to my sewing machine now, and then I'm going to gather this to the 20 inches that is my armhole measurement. So I'll just go back to my machine now and gather everything. You can run a gather stitch now and then drag it, or you just gather it manually. So I'll just gather it manually. I'll go to the machine and gather this back to my actual armhole measurement, which is 20 inches. Okay, so now this is gathered to 20 inches that I started with. Okay, so as you can see, I have 20 inches here. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to close this up. Okay, remember I still have these two ends open. Now like I said, if you don't want this way, you can trim it off like I explained earlier. So here now I'm going to take these two together and then I'll close it up. But while closing it, I'll try to gather it a bit also, because I don't want it this straight. So I'll close it up. You can close it first, then you can take some pleats so that it will form this ball effect that we have here. So you can see what we have. This is what the sleeve is looking like. So I'll go over now and close this, then I'll take it to the mannequin so that we will see what we have. So now I've sewn the underarm area now. I've sewn it and then I gathered it just like I explained. So the ruffled part here, you can see I just held it with my pins. That is the part you sew around your armhole, as you can see, and you can see the ruffles that we have here. So you arrange it well. You can even tuck it in between, but even without that, you can see how beautiful this is looking. So these ruffles just go all around the armhole to give it this beautiful effect that we have here. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful sleeve with me. If you enjoyed this, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.